Hi there, and welcome along to episode 118 of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, a totally free and independent Rangers podcast made by fans for fans, where the content is always absolutely free. And as we say every week, guys, it's not just the podcast that we've got here at Gersnet, but head over to the website www.gersnet.co.uk, where you can also find loads of articles about Rangers, a wee history archive, and of course, the friendly discussion forum, where you will find all of your Gersnet podcast contributors. If you are joining us tonight live, we are live on YouTube. We've got the cameras on. If you're joining us, then thank you very much. Please do leave your comments and questions in the comments, and we will get to as many of those as we possibly can. But as always, the show is available for download first thing on a Monday morning, wherever you get your podcasts, including Acast, iTunes, Castbox, Stitcher, and of course, Spotify. What we're going to be talking about today is looking back at yesterday's game against Motherwell, as well as the midweek shenanigans against St Mirren in the League Cup, and then just a wee roundup of the news that's gone on throughout the week as well. What we might as well do then is fire straight into the introductions of the guests. As I said, the cameras are on, so we can see who we've got and say hello to, first of all, part-time podcast host and full-time fantasy football pro. It's David Wren. David, how are you?
Thank you, Ross, for that glowing introduction. Last time I did the podcast on the cameras, was recalling that absolutely blew my opportunity. It's such a big hello to the listeners, and the first time they'd seen me live, so looking to make up for that tonight. And not stumble across my words too many times. But I think a lot of it's the fact I can see myself on camera and how handsome I am. So that is an issue that I'll try and get over. And good to be back in the guest chair.
Excellent. No, I'm glad to hear it. Do you find that being the guest is sort of less stressful than being the host?
Oh, 100%. You can just relax right into it. Because I knew looking at your face when Frankie said 25 seconds to go, that was just what I didn't have tonight, that absolute terror. So, but I felt quite smug.
That panic that I've been feeling since 6 minutes after 3 o'clock yesterday, that stress and tension's never gone away, because as soon as we scored, I thought, hosting tomorrow. Also with us this afternoon, or this evening rather, and I'm sure the reason that our female listeners this week is going to go up by about 200 or 300%. Alec Anderson. Alec, welcome. How are you?
Absolutely fine, terrific. Thanks, Ross. Thanks. Hello, David. How you doing? And I've got to agree how good looking David is. He looks how I felt at full time yesterday, whereas I look how we all felt for the first 70 minutes yesterday. Just like to assure people that I'm not actually fat. It's just this room's really small, And I think it's quite nice that you've got two guys on who, if you added your ages up, it would come to the age of the third guy. So it's nice to be back.
I actually thought with the cameras on, we had the treble winning Rangers manager Alex McLeish on with us, but it turns out it's Alec Anderson instead.
See,
he's big egg, I'm just fat egg. But I taught him most of what he knows for the back of the Govan stand. My advice got him through that, David.
See, I was thinking with the cameras on, it looks like we've got Gregor Hemphill from the Chewing the Fat days and Ford Kieran from Still Game. Rest assured, we are all football experts and not shite patter merchants. Look, we might as well crack on and get talking about Motherwell. Normally, I would sort of do the games in chronological order, but I feel there's a lot more to discuss from the Motherwell game yesterday. We're all a bit more positive after that, and I know that Colin and Stuart in Friday night's preview show also touched on St Mirren, so we'll spend most of the evening talking about the Motherwell game yesterday. Alec, we might as well start with yourself. Your face is up on my screen at the moment, so we'll stay there. We had the lineup yesterday, obviously knowing that Morelos is starting, or is continuing his suspension after being cited by the compliance officer. So Defoe comes in to replace him up top, and Hollander comes in for Balogun, who is still suffering the effects of the head injury that he picked up on Wednesday evening. Was there any surprises in that for you, particularly Defoe up front, leading the line rather than maybe Cedric Kitson?
No, I wasn't particularly surprised. I think, obviously, with Alfie not available, I think there's we'd never say limited, we've got three strikers, but was a feeling maybe that Cedric didn't, I think it's unkind to say he didn't have the best game on Wednesday night. I don't think any of the strikers were really given a proper opportunity in Wednesday night because of the way the game. I mean, St Mirren played well, and they weren't really getting the service they would normally get. But I think it felt right, without criticising anybody else. It felt right that Do you know what I mean? Defoe started yesterday. And I was quite encouraged by the fact that Steve Davis and Glenn Kamara started as well. And I think just the immediate takeaway for me and for a lot of other guys out there, a lot of other Rangers fans out there from Wednesday, was we need to have, if it's a game we need to win against anybody, I think in the top flight in Scotland, we need to have Barisic and Tavernier. Or if one of them is missing, you're going to have at least two of I know Ryan Jack's not available just now, but Jack, Kamara, or Steve Davis. So I was quite encouraged. But no choice, as you say, with Balogun. Big Phil had to come in, and I was quite happy with that. Steady enough pair of hands, and I was quite happy with the starting lineup.
You say that you were sort of quite encouraged seeing the lineup there. How long did that feeling of encouragement last into the first half?
About 6 minutes or something. I can't remember correctly. Aye, and at the same length of time at the Standard Liège game at Ibrox, it was quite uncanny. Not just the way the goal was scored, but the time that it took us to go behind. You know, do you know what I mean? Gets a couple of shots in the first 2 or 3 minutes, and it looks like, yeah, this is the response we're looking for. We're just going to come out all guns blazing. We're going to blow this mob away, and I think we got a bit befuddled by their game plan.
Yeah, I think you're right. David, Gerrard has criticised our defending in relation to the opener, and actually Alec makes a really good point that it was a very similar goal to Standard Liège at Ibrox. What do you think that we could have done better, and what happened there? What did Rangers get wrong in the lead up to that goal?
I think, unfortunately, you know, we've seen a Tavernier in the form of his life this year. We've also seen Barisic who's been excellent. But I mean, unfortunately, yesterday I think both fullbacks were at fault of the goal. You know, Barisic, I think, has to be stronger, you know, to protect the cross from O'Donnell, because O'Donnell's got the time and space to, you know, whack it across the front of goal. And, you know, Tavernier has been fantastic this season, and, you know, we're seeing a lot of pundits who wouldn't normally be, you know, praising, I suppose, our players, saying that he's the only candidate for Player of the Year. So it's quite disappointing, you know, from his point of view, to see that just lapse in concentration again. And we'll come on to the St Mirren game, but having watched the game back for the first time today, I think he probably was sleeping again, ball watching for the third St Mirren goal on Wednesday night as well, which is disappointing. I think it's a shame, because I think defensively he's improved massively this season as well. But just switched off, and it's the same old story. The guy gets in behind him, just without him looking. He's ball watching. All the defenders in the box are ball watching. And it felt like it took an eternity to get across the face of goal, and then when it did, there are guys at the back post to stick it in. It's quite frustrating, that, because the problem we have is teams aren't going to show us any respect, in the sense that they're not going to come out and try and play against us. And by respect, I mean they're not going to come out and play the way we want them to play. So they're going to sit in. And the worst thing we can do in that situation is give away cheap goals, which, you know, whatever way you look at it, yesterday's was a cheap goal. Barisic comes out to the ball and then almost turns his back on it when the cross comes in, and Tavernier sleeping at the back post. So to give away a cheap goal, it all just felt very familiar. And, you know, when that first goal goes in, you know that you're going to be up against it, and it's going to be all about, you know, them and them sort of sitting in and us having to try and break them down. And that was something that last season we really struggled with, especially at home. And when you looked at the team yesterday, Kemar Roofe, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Kemar Roofe was the only one that wasn't there last season. And for me, it was no surprise when you look at the scoreline and who scored the goals yesterday, that it was Kemar Roofe and Cedric Itten that scored, because every other player that played, I think, was there last season when we went through that constantly, where we couldn't break teams down, struggled with a bit of end product, struggled with just a bit of, with ideas in the final third. And it just so happens the two guys that we brought in the summer for decent money were the ones that popped up and rescued us when we really needed it. And that, to me, is probably the biggest positive you can take from yesterday. Yes, it's good that we've managed to, come back from a goal down at home against a really, really stuffy opponent. But for our new signings to make an impact like that, and obviously they've made an impact. Kamal Roof's goal return has been outstanding, but for them to make that impact in that moment with 15 minutes to go, that was the biggest positive for me.
I think you're right, by the way, on Kamal Roof's impact since he's come in, and Cedric Hitton as well. I think they've both brought a different dimension, something that we've been lacking, and there's been a wee bit of criticism about the fact that our goals haven't been scored by strikers, but Kamal Roof's goal return is strong. Cedric Hitton hasn't had a huge amount of minutes, but he's scoring goals, 3 goals against Motherwell, I think, now this season as well. So I'm really, really pleased with the contribution that he's been able to bring. And I think you're right that I was sort of going to ask the question of why was the next 60 minutes so frustrating? And I think you've kind of answered it in that it was Motherwell had a game plan, they nick an early goal and they sit. There's been a lot of talk about, was it 2 banks of 5 or was it a flat 10 at the back? And in a way, you can't really begrudge Motherwell for trying to play that way. That they're trying to nick a result at Ibrox against an undefeated team. So it is encouraging to see that even with the vast majority of that team being the same players as last season, Rangers have found a way. Now, that being said, Alec, it was the vast majority of the team that was there last season, but the changes that were made by Gerrard were players who weren't there last season, and they did seem to change the game. There's been a lot of people talking about, you criticise Gerrard for performances like Wednesday, and then you have to praise him and give him credit for performances like yesterday when it goes right. Do you think that the substitutions that he made changed the game? Or do you think that there was maybe a tactical shift as well that managed to open up Motherwell a wee bit? I might need you to unmute your mic there, Alec.
You might need another substitution shot or get somebody that knows how to press the unmute button. But I think the substitutions definitely helped. I think, and it's when they were made that helps. I think it's the personnel. I think it's a learning process. They've got to a certain point where they know how to deal with this situation now. I think it reminded me a bit a kind of more worrying version of the Lech Poznan game at Ibrox, where when you look back on it at full time, you saw that we just slowly turned the screw, turned the pressure up. We were patient. I don't think we were as patient yesterday, but we're quite patient in that game. We kind of knew it was going to happen. We made substitutions that night at the right time, and we didn't make substitutions at the right time. I remember that game we had, I don't know if it was Joe Arabo, somebody was waiting to come on, and the ever-wise Stephen Craigan was saying, why don't Rangers make the space? That they don't want to break the flow because we're having a spell of increasing the pressure. Ryan Kent and Scott Arfield maybe come in for a bit of criticism for Wednesday night. I don't think that's. I think it's just part of I think in Wednesday night, I know we're going to talk about that later, but I think maybe the team selection, there was too many players playing on Wednesday night who hadn't had long enough together on the park, weren't familiar enough with each other. I think Scott Arfield was maybe a bit off his game because he wasn't getting the runners he was expecting, and Ryan Kent's trying to do too much. He's coming back to get balls that he usually gets with Barisic, but Barry wasn't able to give him. I think to see them on the park yesterday, people might have been a bit upset. That's like maybe wondering why Scott Arfield not getting rested, but he's part of the pressure. Although he came off half time, he's part of the pressure that was applied to Motherwell. Because by the end of the game, they were exhausted. We just ran them into the ground, pushing at them. I think we missed Alfredo because he's a line breaker. He's like, people criticise him for not getting the goals, but I think it's been apparent the last couple of games exactly what he does by its absence. He's able to break the lines through link-up play or just his sheer physicality and mobility. Didn't have that yesterday. But we then had to, instead of that, we're kind of pressuring en masse. And I think by the time Joe Arabo comes on and then Hadji, you're Motherwell starting to crack. And Big Itton comes on as a kind of icing in the cake, and he gets his goal. And I think the players like Roof, we get a bit of criticism on Twitter and what have you, if I'm not having too many chances on Wednesday night. David and I were talking this before we watched the game back, Wednesday night's game, and it was kind of unfounded. He was trying his heart out. His movement's phenomenal as well. I think we've got him and Alfie on the part. We can beat MD. Yesterday it was taking a bit longer, but he kept plugging away. He just kept plugging away, and he never lost his sharpness. And I think we're starting to find out, as per the Standard Liège game at Ibrox, when people target our fullbacks, when they go for them, that should be offering space up in the middle, and we're starting to use that yesterday. We could take Kamara, take Glenn Kamara off because we didn't need another holding midfielder, or I know he's more than a holding midfielder, but we could put Joe Arabo on, we could put Hadji on, and just go for it. And I think it was just a combination of seeing how Motherwell were tiring and knowing how to exploit it. And I think the game management was excellent yesterday. In retrospect, I didn't feel like that at the time when we were struggling to get the equaliser. But I think when you look back on it, it was just a masterful moment, not just in terms of tactics and game management, but I think emotionally, it just feels like we've turned a wee corner there. And if we do win the title, you never want to tempt fate. But I think yesterday would be the moment we look back on and say that's when they learned how to do it.
Well, we've on this show over the last 3 years, I think game management has been quite rightly a stick that we've been able to beat the management team with a wee bit and criticise them, because there have been times where we've thrown away situations where we didn't necessarily need to. Even arguably the Benfica results this season, we shouldn't be throwing away 2-goal leads twice against the same opposition. What is it, Alec, do you think that's changed that's allowing the team now to see out games like this? Because there was a lot of pressure on the team yesterday when it gets to 2-1. It was still tight, it was nervy. And I think the incident you're referring to is players like Hadji in the corner, who is ultimately a player short of confidence, not getting enough game time. What is it, do you think, that's changed that's allowing the team now to have the confidence to see these games out?
As David was mentioned earlier, and the squad, we're buying players, we're getting in Roof and Itten. I think also there's a really strange thing when you watch a team as long as an old man like myself has, when you get to recognise stages that you go through in building towards winning a title or winning titles, and you actually learn as much from losses as you do from wins. And I think when you go back to us going out of the Scottish Cup to Hearts last season, we just looked kind of scared. There was none of that on Wednesday night when we went out to St Mirren. We weren't scared. Right down to big Connor Goldson going for the guy Tate, who we have about all game. Once we'd equalised and we're holding Hadji with the ball in the net, big Connor's right in there, and they looked up for it. They looked up for a fight, as well as it didn't work out that way. We didn't get the result. Then you look at maybe even the game against Aberdeen in the League Cup semi-final the season before that, where we just looked a bit blunt, a bit clueless when it came to actually putting the ball in the back of the net, and that was as much down to the squad. Alfie was suspended and that was it. We only had Sadiq up front, as much down to the squad depth as anything else. And also, I think our game plan under Steven Gerrard is so kind of high spec that we're actually quite high maintenance as well. I think in the past it hasn't taken a lot to go wrong for the whole. Not to faulty pieces, because nobody thrashes us. We never lose a lot of goals. But for us to end up looking like that way we've looked at Rugby Park down in the last few seasons sometimes, where we're just playing the ball about without any clues as to how to penetrate. I think you see this season in particular, when the game plan that Beale and Gerrard and Tom Culshaw have got is realised its greatest potential, is when you have Tavernier crossing for Barisic, or Barisic crossing for Tavernier for a goal. That's when it's its absolute best. That's when everything's just going swimmingly. But I think that the thing to learn, the thing that I've learned through a few games this season, is how to operate when that's not happening. St Mirren didn't double down on our fullbacks the other night. They just really went for them, and that confused us a bit. And I don't think we had the bodies in midfield that are used to. We had Zungu in midfield, and he's still kind of bedding in. He didn't really know how to exploit the extra space that was going to give us in the middle. Yesterday we got there against Standard Liège. We got there. We learned how to how to exploit a kind of second option when people are doubling down on the fullbacks. And I just feel as if this has been a game plan. We were wondering why we're losing at home to Hamilton Accies last season. Why we're, it's why the games that we're slipping up in aren't the big games. We never embarrass ourselves when we're playing Celtic or we're playing, in Europe. And I think it's because this team just feeds off sheer intensity. And I think yesterday when somebody targets my fullbacks, I think the problem came with the goal yesterday was because Barisic hadn't got himself forward enough already. Tavernier and Barisic are primed to go forward. It's like a reverse of how it used to be with fullbacks. They're really good defensively, and when they're in a great game, they'll go forward. I think this team now with real cutting edge tactics, it's if they're attacking really well, the defending improves. And they hadn't got a goal yesterday, but we're learning how to actually to find enough. And I think it's just a 3-year plan that's really coming together.
Well, it certainly seems to be coming together. David, we've spoken a wee bit about Kemar Roofe, and I don't think at this point I could overstate my admiration for him as a player. I think on the ball and off the ball, he's excellent. You saw yesterday the way that he drifts from side to side through the middle. He definitely brings value in the whole of the final third, not just in one position. And yet, both of his goals yesterday were somewhat scrappy. And you could argue that all three of our goals were a wee bit scrappy. It was a congested box, a wee bit of a ping around, and then one of the strikers gets on the end of it and knocks it in. Not a huge amount of finesse to any of the goals, I think. But to what degree can you actually praise the striker for scoring a goal like Roofe did yesterday? Or to what degree is it all luck and being in the right place at the right time?
I think the best strikers in Rangers' recent history, you look at McCoist and probably look at Chris Boyd in the last proper title-winning team, or certainly one of them, were penalty box strikers. And how many goals did both of those guys score that were, I wouldn't say tap-ins, but certainly goals in and around the 6-yard box. I actually thought, that's the sort of one. The first goal yesterday was one of those where, if that's Morella's, and he's been a fantastic striker for us, but it's one of them you wouldn't always think he's definitely going to score that goal, because it's just come to Roofe so fast on his bad foot, and he's hit it on the turn and at the roof of the net. I thought it was a fantastic finish. And I think actually, when we were linked with him, I think it was you and I were on the show, Ross, at the time, when we were linked with Roofe, and that was one that just straight away I was like, that is, he's a player for us. I think that's been true. And I think even when he first came to the club, before he got injured in that European tie, I thought he was starting to look the part. And obviously he's now playing a sort of different role in the team, but I just think he's been, even on Wednesday night, when you were watching his body language in the game, I'd never felt like he was throwing the toys out of pram or getting frustrated or upset. I always thought like he was the one that was driving the team, and he was the one that was constantly saying, right, come on, let's get back into this game, let's give it a go. Because there was a lot of sort of shades of last season. I think yesterday, he went one better yesterday because he really grabbed the game by the scruff of the neck. And whether the goal was in the 6-yard box or he hits it from the halfway line like he did in Belgium, he is a goal scorer. And 8 goals in 11 games in all comps. That's in the league. 8 goals in 11 games in the league is great. I mean, that's a great stat. He's up there with, the top goal scorers in the league. And you consider, I think, Tavernier's played 18 games and scored 11 goals. So when you work that out between Roofe playing 11 games and scoring 8, it's a fantastic return. And I think, as I said earlier, yesterday for him to come up trumps like that, just shows faith in what Ross Wilson and the recruitment team are doing and how they're identifying players. Because I think the final piece of our puzzle last season, what we needed were players who, when the chips were down and when we really needed something or someone to come up with something, they were going to produce. And I think yesterday was, again, as I said earlier, really, really rewarding that you saw 2 strikers who we brought in the summer, both from overseas, even though Roofe's played in England, most of his career, but he was playing in Belgium. He had a really, really tough time with injuries. He's come over here and he's just hit the ground running. And Itten, as you said earlier, hasn't had as many games, but from what I've seen, And as Alex said, on Wednesday night, everyone, it was a crap game for everyone. But for him to get, what would have been the winner yesterday will be a great confidence boost. And if you add that to his goal against Lech Poznan, it's really, really positive. And I think, I don't care how the goals go in, especially in those games, because they are just a slog. And as long as, we have strikers that are going to produce goals. So a lot's been said. We talked about it in last week's show about Morelos and his form and how he's, where his head's at. But the best thing for him is if Roof and Itten start scoring, because he'll think, right, okay, so that's not just the right back that's scoring all the goals or the centre half. So now I'm maybe in danger of losing my spot here. And I think he'll come back refreshed actually from the 2 games off, and I think you might see a better side and a more hungrier side in terms of goals for Alfredo Morelos. So I think all positive from yesterday, and now the depth we've got in that position is as good as most teams. Certainly, I think we've got the strongest in that department in Scotland at the moment. Really, when you look at it, we'll get 4 if you include the 4 really good strikers. So if we can, if Roof keeps up that form, then he's going to be a formidable opponent for anyone in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll stay with yourself, David. We obviously lost the season-long unbeaten record on Wednesday night, although the league unbeaten record, which is probably very, very important, is still intact. Yesterday was an interesting test for the side, and it's the first time this season that they've had to react, they've had to bounce back. And that's something that last season, after the winter break, we struggled with. We struggled to respond to negative results well. How important is yesterday's result in terms of showing the right mentality as well as keeping up the pressure and extending the gap? Obviously, another game in hand for Celtic today when they didn't play in the league over the weekend. How important is it to on both fronts of showing that the mentality has improved and extending the points difference even further?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone that saw the score, 6 minutes in, as we touched on earlier, it felt very much like, we were going into old habits, which didn't fill you with much hope going into the rest of the game. I think mentality-wise for the team, I think there's probably 3 aspects to that. I think there's a positive in the terms of the group and the team themselves, in-house. I think it will give them a lot of belief that they were able to overcome that stuffy Motherwell defence, which it was. And they set it up to do a job on us, and I don't blame them for that. I think teams are well within their rights to bring whatever tactics, and we can't really judge anyone and what they come to Ibrox and do, because it's up to us to take the game to them, and that's what we should be doing at Ibrox every time we play there. We should be taking the game to the opponents. Doesn't matter who it is, whether it's Motherwell, Ross County, Celtic, whoever. It's up to us to take the game to them. So no complaints there from me. But I think for the team it'll be big for their mentality and their overall, belief in what they can achieve this season. I think for our supporters it's a big statement, because there's nobody. If you can tell me a Rangers fan that 73 minutes was thinking we're going to win this game, then I think you'd be struggling. I think you'd be telling fibs, to be fair, because nobody thought that. I didn't think that. I thought, Jesus, here we go. Especially when it was 73, 74, still 1-0. It felt like a very, very familiar story. So that was big, because now we think, right, okay. And to be fair, I already sort of felt like that, not yesterday, but I always felt like we had it in us to come back. And I think the Liège game was a good example of that at home. But I think yesterday was a big test, especially off the back of a tough defeat. There was always going to be the hangover there. And it was about how we sort of reacted to that. So for us as fans, good thing, because now we think, right, okay, so we don't have to panic too much if we get to 60 minutes and we're still 1-0 down, but we're probing, we're trying. And then I think the third aspect to it is people outside the club. And I know we shouldn't really worry about people outside the club, whether it's the media or opposition fans. But the pressure that comes with the expectation you have in yourself, coupled with the fans, is bad enough. But the expectation on us this season out with the club, I think, is pretty big as well. I think especially the way we've started, You're seeing it in a lot of newspapers, a lot of websites online, a lot of radio shows, a lot of podcasts. Everyone's talking about how well we're doing, how we don't look like losing games. If we'd lost yesterday, you would have found that just flipped. You know, it doesn't matter what you've done in the first 27 games of the season. I think you saw a wee bit of it through the week, but I think it would have been a lot worse if we'd lost yesterday. So that then sends a message to those people, whether it's opposition fans or the media, that listen, we're not going to be that team this season. We're going to stand up and be counted. And I think, you know, when you look at those three aspects, I think they're the three most important: the team themselves, the fans, and then the outside world, because the pressure that can be exerted on you from that expectation from everyone there is difficult. And I think we answered a lot of questions, and I think it was questions across that board which were there, and they were rightly there, because last season, you know, after January was just the most depressing few months, and now it's not getting any better with COVID in terms of everyone's lives in the whole world. And yeah, it was just a good feeling, and it was most I've celebrated a goal in a long time when Cedric got the second, because it just felt like sheer relief that God would actually manage to get that winner and get that monkey off our back, that when we concede a goal, we're not going to, you know, lose games at home because we can't break down the opponent.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. Alec, we'll just come with one last word on the Motherwell game. That puts us on to 50 points. 18 games gone this season, not even halfway through the league campaign, on track for 105, 106 points. At what point do you sort of start to tip from hope to belief that 55 is coming this year?
When the third goal went in yesterday, that was, for me, that was it, Ross. I think the other thing about yesterday, when we were a goal down with 20 minutes to go, was it was an opportunity. I'm not saying I didn't believe we were going to come back or necessarily win the game, but the one thing that was absolutely sure is that this was the opportunity to prove all those doubts that David's alluding to that we've had over the last couple of years about Stevie G's team. There's been a lot of doubts. That this was an opportunity to just prove that, yeah, we've got that little bit of grit that makes the pearl, you know, in the oyster. And I think we've actually got to the point now where it would be embarrassing if we just ended the season with a League Cup or a Scottish Cup. It's gone beyond. I think it actually went beyond it last week at Tannadice when we pulled that off. Somehow that just felt as if this has gone too far. If you like, we're now too far in front. This isn't just a bit of form. You know, the narrative around is collapsing the last couple of seasons, especially considering where we'd been in the previous, 6, 7, 8 seasons. It was a bit bogus, because we really just nudged ourselves in front with the Old Firm wins and the two consecutive, the kind of about New Year period. Now, albeit Celtic have those games in hand, at worst we are 7 points and a hell of a lot of goal difference clear, and we haven't lost a league. We've dropped 4 points in the league. We're at the halfway point. We'll play our 19th game at St Johnstone on Wednesday, and to be in that situation, if we can win that game, I think I'm actually feeling now that the way Stevie G just keeps pushing on, ignoring all the criticism and just pushing on with his own targets, I think we'll be disappointed. Our major disappointment this season will be not going unbeaten for the whole league season. It'll be, not getting that 100 points or something like that. I think that the league title win for me is going to come pretty early. As long as we can navigate. I think even just till the 2nd of January. And I'm pretty confident that we're on our way.
You see, I'm inclined to agree with you, Alec, because you're a wise man and always bring us a lot of insight. But what I will say is that you're getting absolute pelters in the YouTube comments for your pronunciation of Aribo as opposed to Aribo.
That's the Ardrossan pronunciation.
Is it?
I think it Joe's a Salkit's boy, so that's how we pronounce it. You know what I
mean? Fair enough. You know best. Alec, I'll stay with you. You said that you rewatched the St Mirren game. You put yourself through that punishment. For our benefit to bring your insight. Now that obviously the dust has settled, and we had a wee chat off air before we came on air about this. Now that the dust has settled, how do you reflect on a game that was highly frustrating, highly sort of emotionally charged? I think for all spectators, all Rangers fans watching us lose the most incredible opportunity to win silverware that we've had for a number of years, but lose an unbeaten record at the same time. How do you reflect on that now that some time has passed?
I think two things, but my first instinct was same as everybody else. We're blowing a chance for a trophy there. But the thing that watching it again kind of showed me yesterday, in Thursday when I watched it again, was that we were nowhere near as bad as I had thought we were. You know, when you're caught up in the emotion watching the game, and the point I was trying to make earlier about how you learn more from your defeats. I think although our emotions are kind of confusing how we're regarding the game, because we just want a blooming trophy. I mean, like Celtic are out of this competition, as you say, it's not have a greater opportunity. Why we're not winning this? But we actually analysed the game itself. I think it was just, as I say, a few players that are a bit unfamiliar with each other. There was no lack of effort. I think it was an assumption, and I made it as well in the heat of the moment, that we'd scored the goal after 7 minutes. We've got 27 games unbeaten. But because we don't have a trophy in the cabinet, the team starts resting on laurels that they haven't actually worn yet. They haven't actually earned. But when I watched it back, no, there was absolutely no lack of effort. The intensity was there. The effort was there. St Mirren played well. They really went for it, and they're on a good run. St Mirren, you know, it's not a character for them just now. The referee changed at the last moment, you know, a substitute referee, if you like. I don't think he had the best game. I don't mean that in a kind of conspiracy sort of way, because I mean, he sent off Jim Goodwin for celebrating, you know, probably the biggest win of his managerial career, a la Andy Halliday at Morton a couple of seasons. It must be a Renfrewshire thing. But no, I think we could quite easily had a couple of St Mirren boys could have been sent off, you know, if it had been refereed a bit differently. We could have had a few more fouls here and there as well, you know. We had the ball in the back of the net, albeit the ball was out. And I felt as if it felt as if that was it. That was the moment. This is the last. I have this. Maybe it's a superstitious thing. I don't know. Maybe over dramatic. But I feel that teams that are trying to come back from a long unwinning run always have a moment where they get a taste of what they've been through before they actually just finally turn it around. You know, it's a bit kind of Hollywood movie script. You know, but we were all there. It certainly wasn't anything like a Hollywood movie at Hampden when Hibs won the cup. They hadn't won that thing for 114 years, and it looked that day like they'd Hibs that again, you know, just before they actually turned it around. We saw, you know, PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, infamously can't get past the quarterfinals of the Champions League, you know, for all the money they've got. And last season they were 1-0 down, going into injury time against Atalanta. Bang, bang, 2 goals. Suddenly they're through. And I feel as if this is, in terms of the last 10 years, you know, the last 9-10 years, I feel this is our moment. I felt as if Tuesday night was just the last taste we required of that kind of thing where it's snatched away from us. It's never, even when we're trying to win the blooming Ramsden's, Rumbelows, whatever it is, the Challenge Cup, you know, we're conceding a last minute goal to Queen of the South and then going out in penalties. You know, we're 2-0 up at Alloa, you know, and losing 3-2 in the last 20 minutes. It felt as if a wee taste of that. It was equalising right at the end, was just a kind of final salt in the wound. But I think what's happened is it's given us that character that we're needing to see from it, that kind of perverse thing where you're always what you see is in a terrible situation, so this team can finally prove that they've got it to deal with everything. And it's actually happened 3 times this season. The 0-0 with Livingston, at Livingston, where we looked really blunt, we didn't have a clue about how to penetrate a deep line defence. And then that bled into, we're expecting a response the following week against Kilmarnock at Ibrox. And at half-time, it was still 0-0 at Ibrox in that game, and we looked like we hadn't really learnt our lesson. Come out the second half, Roof involved again, we win 2-0. They have turned it round. I get the 2 games with Benfica. I actually think the second game against Benfica, you know, we had to go 2-0 up really early to get a point out of them. You know, but on paper it looks like we've chucked 2 goal leads in successive European games. And so when we're looking for us to blow Standard Liège away, you know, I mean, we beat them 2-0 in Liège, so come on, you know. But no, they come out and just absolutely blow a gasket. throwing everything at us, and we go behind again a minute after responding, but we got through that. And I think yesterday was just part of the story. Yesterday, the fact that we were expecting us to blow away Motherwell as a response to Wednesday night. And when I say that when we look back, when we do actually win the league, and hopefully it's this season, we're going to look back at the Motherwell game as the moment we really knew. I think part of that was what happened on Wednesday night too. You know, we're expecting an immediate response yesterday. It was the opposite. We go a goal down and we're struggling again. And it's like we found that character. The goals, we were talking about Roof, it looked a bit scrappy yesterday, so I'm going back to yesterday. But it almost characterised that's what we've been wanting to see for Rangers. Can you scrap? You know, close up, the goals are absolutely brilliant. The world class finishing for Roof and what have you. But we proved we could scrap. So I actually think Wednesday night was that bit of medicine, that kind of sour taste that we needed just to get us going. And I think it's actually the making of this team.
Very philosophical way to look at it. David, Gerrard has kind of come out after the game and said, can't blame the players after what they've given us this season so far, the runs that they've been on, and that he would take the blame for that result. But when you look at the lineup, I think we were all actually surprised at how strong that starting 11 was. I would be hesitant to blame the manager for the team that he put out and the system that team played. So does that leave you in a position of blaming the players for that result? Or I know you've gone back and revisited the games well, like Alec has. Do you sort of look back on that without the emotion of the night and say St Mirren played well and it was just one of those nights where it didn't happen for us?
I was concerned when I saw the team, only because I thought the midfield setup just looked really imbalanced. I thought that to play Zungu, Aribo, as Alec calls him, and Harfield, it just seemed a bit, because the full thing this season's been about, you know, the likes of Kamara and Davis and the work that they put in to get across and help the fullbacks. And the thing that concerned me about that team was it just didn't feel like we had that balance in the midfield. It felt like we had two forward-thinking players, and then Zungu, who I quite like as a player. I think he offers us a lot of protection, but I don't think in that particular midfield three that it sort of worked. Out with that, you know, apart from Bassey, who had been decent up until that point, the boy just had a tough night. I think it was pretty much what you would have expected. Even McGregor playing, I mean, I didn't expect that. But yeah, I had concerns about the balance in the midfield from early on. I think that was actually what you saw within the game. You know, we didn't have the same protection for the fullbacks, and I don't think we get enough going in the final third, which we've been successful at with Barisic and Tavernier. So yeah, I think Gerrard has had a pop at the players quite a lot in the past, especially last season, and I think he probably owed them one, because you know you can completely see, not that I'm an expert in spin, but you can certainly see his point there, because the players have given us absolutely everything. You couldn't ask any more. Every single game this season, you know, we've either not conceded, we've battered teams. Even in Europe, we've been outstanding, top in the group. With one bad night, I mean, it was a costly bad night. But I think it would have been unfair if he'd come out and had absolutely annihilated them to the press. In saying that, I felt like the goals we gave away, you know, there's all a lot of individual errors in there. You know, Bassey for the penalty, crazy. No need for that. I think he just gets caught, you know, ball watching again. The second goal is one of those, sort of just, it was a weird one. When it went in, you were like, what just happened? Because it all happened so quickly. But when you watch it back, Arfield's just rash, and he dives in, and as he dives in, he blocks off Goldson, and that's why it looks so quick, because the guy's just managed to, I should have my Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville analysis board here, but Arfield sort of runs in and blocks off Goldson, and then the guy just slots it in. And the third one, Tavernier, I don't know what he was doing. I mean, when you watch it back, it's something that we forgot, or certainly I forgot, but Tavernier's marking the guy at the corner. We actually do all right to get it away, and then Tavernier just I don't know what he's doing. It's as if he's trying to organise everyone else. He's watching the ball, and he just sort of walks back into the middle of the box. And the guys at the back post, and by the way, that save from McGregor was save of the season, Worthy. It was unbelievable. And then the guy just runs in and hits it in. And by that time, Tavernier's trying to get back across. And really, so when you look at the goals in isolation, other than the second one, which was just rash from Arfield, wasn't an individual error in that, but the other two there was. And I think when you look at the game back, and you look at it back in a less angry way, because if anyone's like me, the blood just travels to your face when Rangers get beat, and you can't really see anything. And I took a few little samples from some of the Gersnet guys on Wednesday night, and Colin was at the height of depression as normal after the result of that. Ross, I think, he did a few shandies, so he was cool. And Ian was the most philosophical one that I'd contacted, and we both agreed, that we had to show a reaction on Saturday against Motherwell, which we did. But when you look at the game back, it wasn't quite as bad as we all felt on Wednesday night. But in saying that, it was the same old errors that have cost us in games like that in the past. And for us to go out of that competition when it was such a fantastic chance to win a trophy, and actually after the Falkirk game, when we got St Mirren away, I don't think anyone would have expected that, because we were riding the crest of a wave at that point after Celtic had been knocked out. So, it hurts. But after Alec's rousing speech about how we're going to win the league in May, I feel a lot better now. So, but I think as time passes, and after yesterday, someone was trying to wind me up about the result on Wednesday night today, and I was like, well, listen, you're only as good as your last result, and I think that was a big moment for us yesterday to react. And as I said to Colin on Friday or Thursday, when we were chatting about it after the fact, we can't control anything of what this team does. So we can all moan about it on social media and stuff, which we all do, and we all moan about it to each other. But ultimately, we've just got to trust Gerrard and trust the players and trust that they are learning from these mistakes, because ultimately it's them that are going to do it this season. It's not us. We can't do anything this season because we're not even in the stadium. So I think we've maybe just got to relax a wee bit, and just, it's hard as a Rangers fan, especially at the moment, especially after these years of turmoil that Alex just put us through, mentioning the Ramsden's Cup. But I feel like I'm picking on you, Alex. Sorry, mate. But we're all impatient for trophies, but I think we've got to maybe relax a wee bit, especially when we can't even get in the stadium and back the team. And it was sore on Wednesday. It really was. Everyone was gutted, but the bigger picture is we're 16 points clear at the top of the table. We're looking strong. Our opponents don't look particularly strong. We play them in a few weeks, and by the way, got a few tough fixtures before that. But listen, we're in a good space. We're in a good spot. Much better spot than we were this time last season. Much better team than we were this time last season. So Wednesday was a sore one. It's sore not to lift the trophy for the 28th time, but just got to kind of go on with it. And as I say, take the positives out of yesterday and move on. And hopefully Wednesday night brings another good result.
Aye. And maybe, I think as Alec kind of alluded to earlier, maybe it's just one of these things that we have to go through to remember everything that we've been through and show. But really, this codifies and solidifies the improvements that have been made by this Rangers squad, which is by and large the same group of players as we had last season. But the growth within them to respond to a result like Wednesday with a performance like yesterday's is really, really encouraging. I think that's probably the best way to put Wednesday's result to bed. So let's do exactly that. There's a couple of things in the news that we can talk about very briefly. Alec, the Rangers AGM, given that we've had two matches since that happened, it actually seems about a lifetime ago now, taking place obviously in the virtual world. And I'm sure that if we'd done a show earlier in the week, we could have easily filled a whole hour talking about it, but we've not got the luxury of that, unfortunately. So what are your kind of main takeaways from Rangers AGM this year?
Just a bit of guilt that I never actually paid too much attention to it, to be honest, Ross. I think I've had my fill of boardroom dramas and involvement with that kind of thing over the last 8 years or so. I saw the headlines. There's obviously something going on. With the Club 1872 and whether the club approve of what Dave King's doing in the current board. But I know the campaign's been launched under the guise, it's been sold to us as that we should never let it happen again. What happened in 2012, and that's absolutely 100% correct. I understand that, but I must admit, I'm just been enjoying the football. I know I seem like the worst kind of head in the sand kind of fan. I pay my season ticket. I'll follow who I'm told to follow by the guys who are getting heavily involved and all this kind of stuff. But I know enough to know that I'm happy just now with the way the board is and the people that are on the board. And I know obviously we're looking at selling players. That's becoming that's a way to get out of any debt that we might be getting into because of COVID, a debt that's going to affect everybody in football of our kind of scale and size. But to be honest, I'm almost kind of at that stage just now. I'm just happy with who's in charge. And I'm almost taking a wee break from it. I didn't get myself too kind of fundamentalist type involved as I have been in the past. So no, I was just quite happy to lose myself in a European draw and getting put out of the League Cup.
Well, there you go. I mean, there's been so much that's happened over the last week that I've completely forgotten that we've not even discussed the European draw, which was, I can try and squeeze it into the agenda now, why not? We all know that obviously it's probably one of the better draws we could have had. Alec, as a passionate European football supporter, you must have been pleased to see the draw come out as it was.
No, I was absolutely distressed because I've waited about 25 years to see Royal Antwerp in the flesh. They're one of the 102 teams have played in European club finals, Ross, and even though it hasn't helped my pronunciation of Joe Aribo's name, I've seen 71 of them. And two of the teams I had left to see was Standard Liège and Royal Antwerp. So this season's turning into, I think the draws are actually just targeting me, even more viciously than David is tonight. It's another type of online bullying. But for Rangers, if he's concerned about Rangers, I suppose it was a good draw. But no, I must admit my first instinct was I was absolutely raging. I knew we were going to get somebody that I needed to see now that we can't get into the stadiums. And I talked to NHS staff and all that, and they almost seem to think their life's harder than mine because I can't get to see these teams at Ibrox. You know what I mean? I get a distinct impression they're very sympathetic, but no, it was a really good draw. They are, we are the favourites. Simple as that. They're kind of mid-table. I think they're having a good result tonight. Before we come on earlier, they're 3-0 up at half time. But they're a cracking old team, Royal Antwerp. They're a bit of a kind of Walter Mitty club. They've got a great stadium. They're the oldest team in Belgium, but they're about 9th or 10th in the list of Belgian title winners. They beat Spurs in this season's group stage. Like ourselves, they qualified with a game to spare, but they were playing Spurs reserves, and they lost to Spurs reserves in their last game. But it will not be easy, but I think they will be easier than Standard Liège. And I'm more of a, as I've been proving tonight, I'm more of a kind of general story man than the actual details. But what I will say is that they won their third, I think, Belgian Cup last season to qualify. They went straight into the group stage. But the last time that they won the Belgian Cup, they got to the European final the following season. At Wembley, they lost to Parma, and that's why I was wanting to see them. But no, never mind. Wasn't going to happen.
Would it make you jealous if I told you that a couple of years ago when I was living in Luxembourg, I went to Standard Liège versus Royal Antwerp?
You're making that up.
I know. Honestly,
get David back on it. Get David back on it to slag my pronunciation. That is online bullying. I've got it on video as well. You know what I mean? You're kidding me on.
Dreadful game as well. Awful. David, to close out the show, obviously we're recording this on Sunday evening. Saturday afternoon, we get more political announcements about COVID restrictions. where I am in the southeast of England is very, very tight and locked down, and that's sort of Christmas. We're not allowed to see friends and family. We're just our own household and stuff. Doesn't seem to have affected football in terms of, there's obviously been minor disruption for certain clubs, but the league in Scotland is still ploughing ahead. We're reaching the halfway point in the season now. Given the way that this virus does seem to be getting worse at the moment and the restrictions are getting tighter, what hopes do you have for seeing out the rest of the season? Do you think that we have a chance of getting to completion, or do you worry that there's going to be some schemes and machinations that see this league sort of wrapped up early?
I don't think so. I don't think in the top flight. And the only reason I say that is the testing's so stringent in the Premiership. So I would be surprised if we were in trouble. The ones I would worry for would be the lower leagues. I think they might be, potentially in trouble. But we don't know. I mean, it's really, really difficult because we've been told about new variants and things like this that are speeding up the spread, but very, very sort of sketchy what the detail and whether it's even in Scotland yet. So I think this has been, and I'm no political or scientific expert, but I think a lot of this is to do with, Christmas and the obvious taking the piss of Christmas that might have occurred. So I don't know if this is an attempt to sort of curb that best they can. It seems like it's sort of come out the blue a wee bit. I think we probably expected something, but it was quite pretty shocking, I would say, stuff yesterday coming from Westminster and from Edinburgh. So, listen, Colin and I did this show in March, the week before lockdown, the Sunday, and we sat that night and said, God knows, and we discussed arguably the worst game I've ever seen, which was Ross County 0, Rangers 1. And the poor listeners had to listen to us the two of us talking shite for an hour. There was only two of us on the show, so we should have known that it was the end of the world coming. But we didn't know what was going to happen then, and it was a really weird one because you really didn't know. And I think even 10 months, 11 months on, we're still not entirely sure what's going to happen next week. So I think the way that football is at the moment, we seem to be doing okay. We have these bubbles, we have good mass testing in football. It seems to be going well. I think the SPFL and the SFA maybe stand up for themselves a bit more at this stage, and say, look at our testing, look at what we're doing, because this is, it's absolutely seamless. And I think I think football's got more of a right to do that now. We don't have any fans in the stadium, so that won't affect things. But you just don't know. You really don't know. I'd like to think that, 16 points clear, that we maybe get handed 55, who knows? But if not, I think we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully we see out the season, and Alec Anderson's up there to pick up the trophy in May.
I can't think of anyone who would deserve it more. Gents, I think we've sort of just about tipped over the 60-minute mark, so it's about time that we wrap things up there. As always, I just want to say a massive thank you both to Alec and to David for giving up their Sunday evening to join me and talk about Rangers. There's nothing we'd all rather be doing. Thanks as well to everyone who's joined in on the comments on the YouTube stream, and to Frankie, who's been patrolling. Appreciated. The show will be back next Sunday to discuss, hopefully, Rangers continuing momentum with a win out in Perth, and then the Boxing Day fixture against Hibs. Obviously, two very, very tough fixtures for Rangers, and a really, really crucial period if we want to keep pushing on into the new year. As always, please do head over to the website at www.gersnet.co.uk and get involved in the discussion forum if you're not already logged on. There's always plenty of great chat there and fantastic articles, match previews, history archiving, and all the rest of it for everyone to get involved in. And as always, please do download, like, subscribe, share the podcast. It really does help. The only other thing to say is thank you very, very much for joining us. Please do stay safe and have a great week.